So as part of the EFO program, the first year you have to, and I don't know if I've only been to the first year, so I don't know if they repeat it, but part of the 2-week class at the NFA, you have to do a TED Talk. And they give you a few rules. It's got to be 8 minutes long, but no longer than 12 minutes. It's got to tie into the program. They have a little 4x4 taped box on the floor that you can't leave. You can't use notes. And if you use a PowerPoint slide presentation, it can only have 2 slides on it. So those are the rules, and everybody has to come up with here's their TED Talk. And I think really it's more about just getting up in front of the group and talking and preparing and obviously, So the one that I chose to do was mentoring, an experience that I had mentoring a firefighter at the station. So this is what I had done, and we're gonna talk about some of it.
What's at the heart of being a mentor to someone? What is it that you do for that person you're trying to help grow, and how badly can one person screw it up? This story answers all 3 of those questions. It begins in 1985. A British Air Tours 737 burned up on the runway in Manchester, England, killing 53 of the 137 people on board. 53! And the plane's wheels never left the ground. During the investigation into what happened, questions about the passengers wouldn't go away. The ones that died were scattered all over the plane. Some died within feet of the emergency exit, while others who were farthest from the exits lived. So they conduct a series of experiments where they get a similar 737, fill it with test subjects, and then tell them all that the first 50 or so to exit the plane will get a cash prize. The findings were fascinating. 70% of the test subjects would try to get out, but order was preserved, and they would wait their turn to exit. We'll call them people. 15% of the people would do anything to get out. They'd push old ladies and kids, maybe even kill. We'll call them killers. The other 15%, when standing within a foot of an open door, couldn't step through it. They were literally unable to help themselves. We'll call this group Connor. Now, Connor came to me in 2005. I was a new station captain leading a group of real go-getters. Some of these guys were legendary within our department. They were some of our department's killers. Nothing could stop them on scene. Connor was a perfect physical specimen, mid-20s, over 6 feet tall, and what you'd want in a firefighter. If they'd made a movie about our station, the guy that plays Thor would have played Connor. But what Connor had in physical abilities, he lacked in reasoning. His spirit animal was a deer in the headlights. I pushed the responsibility for mentoring Connor down to the drivers and firefighters in the station. After all, they were the authorities, but they struggled with Connor. He actually drove the ambulance out of the station and down the road with the compartment doors open on the driver's side. When he got back to the station, I pushed the authority back down and asked him for a solution. He proposed that he do a walk-around every time he got into the truck. I agreed. Imagine my surprise when 2 weeks later he drove the ambulance down the street with the compartment doors open again. I can distinctly remember the sound of my fork dropping to my plate as I stood stunned and once again fumbled for my radio to call Connor and tell him over the air for all to hear, "You've got a compartment door open again." Our station's street cred is at risk, and my reputation as an up-and-coming officer is in danger if I can't fix Connor. My killers can't make any progress. So at some point you have to ask yourself, how did this guy end up in the fire service? Why is he even here? Depending on who you were listening to, the rumor was that Connor was dating or engaged to one of the deputy chief's daughters. So with that added pressure, and with no one else making any progress, I end up being Connor's mentor. In my head, Connor is that bottom 15% on the plane in England. Fired his back, an open door with safety on the other side. He can't help himself. All he's got to do is step through the door and he'll be all right. But nothing I'm doing is getting him to take that step and start being like my other killers. So I decide that what Connor needs is very explicit direction. The problem must be with my communication abilities. One house day, one of our drivers sprays foamy disinfectant on one of the kitchen cabinet doors and makes a clean spot. It turns out that the cabinets that we thought were gray Formica were actually white Formica. 17 cans of foamy disinfectant later, and the cabinets are clean, but the floor is covered in 2 inches of gray foam. It's been a long house day, so to signal to everyone that we're done, I turn to Connor and say, "Connor, go get a mop." Moments later, Connor returns with a mop. I ask Connor where the mop bucket is. Now, Connor's been mopping the station floor every morning since he got there. He knows this process. Anyway, he returns in about a minute with a mop bucket. "Connor, and I'm developing this twitch in my left eye as I try to control myself. Connor, where is the water? I leave Connor with the task of mopping up the foamy mess. I don't tell him how to do it, but I make sure he understands the end goal. Connor, you're done when the water you wring out of the mop is clear. And then we leave to go to the store to get food for dinner. When we get back 20 minutes later, I'm walking through the station, headed to the kitchen, coming through the day room when I find Connor, feet up, in a recliner watching Kung Fu Panda. The image is strangely reminiscent of watching my young sons watch their cartoons, but I dismiss it, but only for a few seconds. That is until I continue into the kitchen and find the floor still covered in a gray film. To the left against the wall is the mop, in the bucket, with water as dark as if you'd been interrupted while mopping out the inside of a fireplace. In what wasn't my proudest moment, I chew Connor's ass for not finishing the job. He maintains that he did finish. I flex my bugles, and I leave him to finish again, but I don't go far away. I end up sitting in a recliner in the day room cooling off. Kung Fu Panda is still on. I'm not really paying attention to the movie. I'm looking at the television, stewing over my failures to reach Connor, my failure to bring him up to our station standards, and that's when I start to pay a little more attention to what's going on in the movie. Shifu, the Kung Fu master charged with training the oafish panda to fight the ultimate bad guy, comes running up to the old turtle complaining that his task isn't doable, that the panda doesn't have the capability to being turned into the Kung Fu master. I start paying a little more attention. Now, Oogway, the old turtle, tells Shifu that all he has to do is give up the illusion of control. Shifu argues with him that control is no illusion. I'm beginning to lean in at this point. Oogway points out the peach tree above them and tells Shifu that you can't make the tree blossom before it's ready, or bear fruit when it suits you. Shifu counters by striking the tree and making all the peaches fall. He says, "We can make the fruit fall." Then he pits a peach and drives it into the soil, saying, "We can control when and where the seed is planted. That is no illusion." I'm on the edge of my seat at this point. I'm a grown man in a fire station with some of the toughest firefighters I've ever known, and I'm watching a cartoon and taking leadership lessons. This wasn't on the recruiting poster. So Shifu has planted this peach pit in an effort to demonstrate his ability to control, but Oogway the old turtle calmly reminds him that you can wish for an orange or an apple, but the seed that he just planted will grow into a peach tree. And at this point, I fall back into the recliner. All this time, I've been trying to make Connor into something he's never going to be. I was approaching my role as a mentor to him as turning him into one of us. I've been trying to make him into one of my killers. Connor is never going to be a killer. He'll never be in that 15%. And that's when I realize that's not what mentorship is about. Mentorship isn't about making someone into something they aren't. I can't change a peach into an apple, or an apple into an orange. Mentorship is about developing the person you're mentoring into the best version of themselves that they can be. And Connor is a peach. I might wish for an apple or an orange, but Connor is a peach.
So, am I now posting that to Twitter?
Not yet.
You will later.
Yeah, apparently.
We'll work that out.
Yeah, so I really kind of screwed that up. I was trying to make him into something that he wasn't.
How was it received by the EFA or the NFA? EFO?
I don't know. They give you a pass or a fail, and I got a pass.
Oh, okay. So it's not graded by the other students; it's graded by somebody.
No. I mean, you present in front of the other students, but there's nothing. They don't chime in or anything like that.
So in that scenario, did you? And we're going to talk about mentoring and coaching,
Right?
So, do you think you are a mentor or a coach in that as a station captain within the station?
Well, I think we need to define those two things because I think I have a clear vision in my head. I just don't know what it's officially called.
I think, for me, and the way I see it and believe it, is that the station officer and or the battalion chief, for that matter, they are coaches. You are a coach. I don't see it as the mentor. That's, to me, is a little different situation. And the reason I say that is because a mentor, if I'm looking, which is part of the key, I'm looking for a mentor. So I'm looking out there as an individual, and I'm looking at someone that I look up to based on historical knowledge or reputation, or I know that this person is super smart, and and I'm reaching out to that individual. So say you, Hatch, are going to be, I'm interested in you being my mentor. And that person has to agree on it, too, because that person now has to say, yeah, I think I'd be interested in doing that. And the way I understand it and believe it is that what's happening is you're this knowledge base, right? And I'm trying to pull information from that knowledge base. Not so that I can necessarily be exactly like you, but that I can put those experiences into what I know and believe, and make myself grow. Hopefully that I have growth out of that. So the key is that I'm pulling that information out. That would be a mentor. The coach is, you're already the subject matter expert there. Connor is not the subject matter expert. He has no choice but for you to coach him through whatever the situation is, whether it's mopping or whatever. That's how I see that
Okay.
captain is the coach.
Okay. I'm trying to wrap my head around what you just said.
I won't remember it again.
Well, I mean, if I heard correctly, the mentor has kind of the responsibility of pulling what they need out of.
I'm
or
the mentee.
The mentee
is
has the
pulling,
responsibility
right.
of pulling stuff out of the mentor.
Right. And the other thing is, and I read something about this. I'm not 100% on board, but it makes sense to me. In the mentee and the mentor relationship, both have really opportunity at growth. The mentor is also going to have an opportunity to grow. Not saying that the coach can't, because the coach can. If the coach is coaching individuals into how you do a process or whatever the case may be, somebody in that group's probably going to say or do something that you're going to be like, I hadn't really thought about that like that. So there'll be some growth in that also. But it's not necessarily what I would consider focused growth. It's just almost like happen chance growth.
Okay. I think if that's the definition, then I was coaching.
You were coaching or attempting to coach.
Yeah.
So
That
definition
was a
of,
loud exhale.
definition of mentor, just looking it up, says,
You're always the one that looks at the
I know, I have to.
I have to take his phone away.
That defined is a trusted counselor or guide.
That's a mentor?
That's a mentor.
Yeah, but that doesn't really tell us.
But no, and then it goes on, and so coaching and mentoring actually almost go hand in hand.
So
but
I'm
the
gonna-
definitions
I'm gonna-
do cross up a
I'm
little
going to
bit.
jump on Shane for a
That's what I was
second.
hoping. Not
Oh,
really.
there we go.
Awesome.
All right. So,
I'm not an expert in this either, by the way. It's just my opinion. That's my disclaimer.
as a mentor, so I'm going to not really oppose what you said. So, in a coaching situation, you're almost doing it by force. The coached doesn't have to agree. They don't have a choice. They have to be coached. In his situation, it wasn't like Connor came to him and said, I'd like you to be my mentor.
Right.
But he has to go and coach him to do his job.
Exactly.
And so the mentor part is the person is actually receptive. They're open to it. Whereas in the coaching, they're not necessarily open to it.
Right.
So
you're exactly right. That would be one of the key differentiators between the two.
Right.
The mentor-mentee relationship has to be agreed on. No, it won't work without it.
So who
well,
initiates,
it's a two-way conversation.
who initiates the mentor-mentee?
Mentee needs to. No.
Probably, yeah. I can see it going both ways. But
Because let's just say, from an arrogant standpoint, I consider myself a mentor, which means that I am all-knowing, all-understanding, and I am going out there and I'm going to look for somebody that needs my help. I'm really getting into a coaching role at that point. I'm not being a mentor. Somebody has to come to me and it's almost not as formal as, Trosh, I would like for you to be my mentor. It almost starts from this little very organic seed-planted conversation and relationship.
Right.
I agree with that.
I have a question, blah, 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 and you provide that answer.
Right, and then
I have
you
another question.
Right, and then you back and forth. You've
Sometimes
asked
you-
that question because I believe you have the answer.
But
I think
that's-
sometimes you don't even know that you are the mentor.
Yeah, I think you're exactly
It just
right.
kind of
that
highlights
happens
itself
where
later.
That happens in the space that is a vacuum where there isn't a formal mentor program.
Right. So I know I've been involved
So there
in
are
one mentor
companies that have
program.
mentor
yeah.
programs.
Well, they'll say hey, this is going to be your mentor,
Right.
and pretty much this is your go-to person. They're going to help you through this entire thing,
But that's problematic, and the reason it's problematic is because the mentor-mentee relationship, to be what I would consider the most effective, is a relationship has to be there. And if I just randomly assign this guy's going to be your mentor, and I assume that you guys are going to be able to connect, if you don't, then it's not going to be a mentor relationship.
Right.
It's going to turn into a coaching relationship.
If a relationship,
If it even does anything,
right?
exactly.
So we talked off air. Do we have a formal one? And I was in a program that had a mentorship program, and they assigned me a mentor. And I think I had 2 emails from that guy in a year's process 2 times.
That's not a mentor.
So, exactly, no input whatsoever.
That's not even a good coaching.
Right.
That's just
And so I was thinking too about the coaching versus mentoring. The coach shows somebody how to do something. The mentor explains why we do it. It's that conversation to have back and forth with them.
Yeah, to mentoring to me gives a base operation or a foundation of how do I work through this problem myself. Like, I have this situation, whatever it is, and I go to you and I say, what do you think about whatever? I'm not telling you exactly the situation. I'm just giving you some parameters.
Right.
And whatever you tell me, I am now taking that information and just kind of formulating my own, what's the best way to handle this, right?
Right.
But if I went to you and said, hey, I've got this situation, what would you do?
Right.
And you say, I tell you what you do. You make damn sure so-and-so does this, that is coaching. That's coaching.
almost like when we're going out and we're doing training classes, you're training people. They got to be there. You got a subject matter. You're going to deliver it. Well, I think a lot of our mentoring happens on a daily basis without it being formalized. So it has no formality to it. Where somebody has eyes on you and ears on you, and you are having an impact on their perception, their decision making, how they view things. And more often than not, you may find out later on how much of an impact you're having on that person. You're a mentor, but you don't realize it, because you're right, it's not formal. I've never. Hey,
I have a problem with the
mentor?
whole formal mentorship program. I have a problem with that because I'm not sure. Again, this is just my thoughts. I'm not sure that true mentorship can come from a formality kind of concept. I just don't think it
It's like
comes
an arranged
from there.
marriage.
Right, it's just
Right,
to me. It's,
That's our everyday, though.
I'm not saying you can't learn from
I
it.
think you're back to the argument of, can you teach leadership? No, people are born with leadership. No, a mentor-mentee relationship has to be organic and grow on its own, and we can't create that. I don't think that's true. I think you can create it.
I think you probably can at least create the ability to recognize that a relationship, a mentor-mentee relationship, could exist.
Sure.
But again, I think about Roswell. It's such a great. I think there's probably more mentor-menteeing going on in Roswell than any other department. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because you end up with this
melting pot.
Really, this melting pot. And no one's necessarily thinking, oh, this person's got it all together here, or this person's got it all together there. But these ideas are being thrown out there. And really what's happening are the ideas that are thrown out there, or questions that are being asked, are real life things that are going on in their department.
Right.
And they're asking people like Hatch and Pabell, like, this situation's happening, and then you give your experience into that, or your thought process, or you give your experience in that. And they're not necessarily going and doing exactly what you said or what you said, but they are letting that influence how they go and deal with that particular situation. That, to me, is more of a mentoring mentee kind of relationship.
I agree, and I think that happens quite a bit, even with whether you're becoming a new officer, you're a new firefighter, or you're new to the dynamics of working alongside some of the high caliber people that we have, and how do you navigate that water when your reputation's at stake. And we'll get a lot of stuff even career based too, where you're saying, hey, I'm moving in another direction. I mean, some people are moving towards doing something completely different, or I want to go further in my fire career. I just got put into a new officer's role. So all of that, you mentioned, and all of it is usually somebody pursuing you versus you saying, raising your hand and
Let
going,
me tell you what you guys should be doing.
I'm going to mentor you real quick.
Right. Everybody stand down for some knowledge.
Well, I think, too, here for Roswell that you're bringing up, one of the great things is the vast majority of people, no matter what their experience level, what their rank is, wherever they come from, they check their ego at the door.
Yeah.
And it's a very open environment to come and ask questions and learn from each other.
Is it the environment, or were those people chosen to be part of this department because they're already that way?
So one of the interesting things about how our process goes is
Jumped right into that one, didn't he?
Yeah,
Well,
I was going to say, it's like,
how we onboard has a lot to do with it, which is when you apply, they're asking all the peers, how do you feel about this individual?
That's what I'm saying is, are you already, is it the environment that causes people to check their ego, or are you picking people who already don't have an ego?
No, because
there's lots of egos.
Yeah, there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of egos, but the problem it's like I always say it's leaders leading leaders. You got so many high caliber people that you almost have to check your ego at the door, because if you don't, somebody's going to check it for you, because there's too many expertise levels here where you're going to throw something out there and somebody's going to throw that flag out real quick. So no matter how high caliber you are, how experienced, how knowledgeable, educated, and all that stuff, you just got to be extremely cautious, because somebody will throw the flag out in a heartbeat. So you have to work
collaborative man in the department.
You do bring up a good point about the ego, though, and I think it's probably something that we should make a point to. Whether Roswell it just creates an environment where people check their ego, or they hire people that check their ego. If you start talking about and doing some self-reflection, that is one of the things you need to do. Yeah. Whether you're mentor, mentee, coaching, coacher, coachee, whatever, you have to be able to check your ego. The comment that was made, that was a nice flush, wasn't it?
That was.
The comment that was made on Facebook about ego being a barrier because you act like you already know anything, that was kind of a condensed version of ego is a problem. We've talked about it in our combat ready class. The ego is this major barrier, because it does create this situation where it is that block of growth. Like, it's very difficult for you to grow if your ego is already so big you think you know everything.
There's no way. Scare the crap out of me.
But it's also unfortunate because some of them don't know that.
But Roswell's a good environment to check those things.
Because you have those personalities that are going to pop that ego real quick. But think about the environments that you're in.
That'd be Hatch.
Yeah, Hatcher. And not taking the subject into leadership, but very similar to leadership, where somebody thinks that they are a great leader, and 95% of the people around them are laughing when they say that. The same thing goes here, where you have someone that thinks they have humility, they're humble, but everyone around them sees them as an egotistical individual. So it's almost like I think you do have to have the Hatches and stuff around to let you know, because a lot of it sometimes people won't. I personally think it's unfair. I think it doesn't mean it's a flaw, but you need to have the ability to put somebody in check to go, you're running with your ego here. And sometimes a lot of us will do that in the fire service, and there's no checks and balances. And I think some of those people are running around, and they have no idea that the people around them are looking at them going, you're just an egotistical.
So ego, getting back to the mentor coaching aspect, ego ends up being a blocker there no matter what. I mean, so if I'm a mentee, right, and I'm looking for a mentor, but I'm just so full of ego, like I already know everything.
I don't think you'd be looking for a mentor if you're that full of yourself.
But I've got some formal process that has forced this mentorship process. It's not going to work.
So well, I mean, let's take Bill's example. You know, if his ego was out of control, he could have sat there and not even
Bill's.
Yes, the scenario he just read off. If his ego had been out of control, sitting there, he would have never gleaned any inspirational leadership from the movie. I mean, he took something that typically you wouldn't think was applied at all, but because he was searching for answers still and not letting his ego, just focus on the fact that Connor, there's something wrong with Connor. There's something wrong with Connor. He was turning it into himself and taking ownership of it. I'm like, where am I failing? He didn't let his ego get it out of control,
right.
Which I think is a great thing. That a lot of people,
I think it is too. It's probably a missed piece of that.
Every leader is going to fail, going to struggle. You're not going to be able to reach every person, and I just think people have to grasp that that you're going to have those challenges, that you have to start looking at. I still have to grow. I still got to do things.
Let me challenge you with a question real quick. And I know all the listeners can put a name in their mind right now of a super egotistical person, or someone that they perceive as having a tremendous ego and very full of themselves and their capability to perform, but yet they are mentoring at a very high capacity to a lot of people. So you have some people that are seeking out. You have some people that are seeking out direction.
No, they're not mentoring. They're coaching.
I'm not even saying there may be influencing, because I think you better be careful to mix. Be careful to mix influence.
Do you want to look that one up?
Because we have this actual formal process, and that person may not necessarily be mentoring thousands of people, but he is influencing thousands of people.
Right, because, and I'll say when we go back to that there has to be a give and take,
right?
That's not happening.
Right.
With those guys that are super egotistical, that is not happening. It's you talking down to and passing on, influencing, as he's saying. The mentoring comes in where you almost are on the same level. They don't feel that, being talked down to. They're talking with.
So you have to have
the
some
relationship.
the humility has to be present.
Yeah.
Trust has to be present.
Relationship
has to be present. Where with coaching, it does not.
Right, because you're basically telling them how to do this,
Whether it's formal authority given, rank authority,
right.
Whatever the case may be.
And I think the reason...
That doesn't mean they respond well to it. It's just...
This is like the quietest Bill's ever been.
He's getting ready to vomit. He's getting ready to vomit a dissertation.
He's probably fixing to shoot everyone
for 8 minutes straight at the beginning of this. So.
Yeah, but this is good discussion.
So what are we telling the younger firefighters? If we're telling, and I'm kind of summing up some of the things, but number one, we've said that the mentee seeks out the mentor.
All right, so this is going to bring in some other things, going into the millennial generation and stuff. I know you don't like that term, but there's nothing wrong with millennials. But one of the things is, and I read an article that I thought was great. It talked about the millennial generation was the first generation that did not have to go through an authority figure to gain information. They get it off the internet. They just do whatever. Before they had to go through a librarian, a teacher, a parent, blah, blah, blah. Now they can just look it up. But there's some things that they still need to develop that relationship, and they have a difficult time developing that with those. So I think it's still the mentor's job to slow it down, get to know these individuals, talk to them about their lives and stuff. Don't always just wait for that guy.
Maybe the mentor's relationship or responsibility in that situation is not necessarily to provide technical expertise, but it's more to provide that emotional expertise, how you deal with people, how you interact with individuals. It's not necessarily that I'm going to tell you something and you're going to be technically better. I may teach you how to connect with people so that you can take your technical know-how and then spread it. Well, you see what I'm saying? That could be that mentor doing that.
I think we got caught up in the beginning of explaining and defining, and I know for me it's always a big deal because I need to know the definition so I can kind of track. But when we get caught in the middle of that and you have some people that are new to the fire service and they're trying to figure out what the hell difference it make, mentor, mentoree, and all that, is there kind of is no greater honor to have in your career than somebody to choose you as a mentor, and they're not going to tell you necessarily, hey, I'm choosing you as a mentor. So with that being said, a lot of people are mentors, may not realize it, and you're having a tremendous amount of impact and influence over people's decision and what they do and how they do things, from career goals to daily lives at the firehouse, being active, training, just the whole entire thing. So most of us, I think, to some degree, have somebody we're mentoring, even if we don't realize it. And the significance that it has is they're watching your actions, what you do, how you behave, how you've achieved the things you've achieved, or why you're respected the way you're respected. So it's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and it's an honor if somebody's chosen you and you don't even know that you've been chosen for the most part. And I think usually that doesn't come out till way later. that something comes out where they say, hey, I appreciate you. You've really been helping me through all this, and you don't realize how much of an impact you've had in their career. And, we keep kind of going around the firehouse thing, but in all actuality, even in the personal lives, because a lot of the personal stuff bleeds into the firehouse, and these discussions take place, and we'll have 4 or 5 people around talking, and they're actually really paying attention to one individual who they consider that mentor. So as I listen, I say, through my career, the mentors that I have chosen, really it's a huge honor to them that they lived a lifestyle, whether professionally or personal, that you would choose them.
So you touched on something that really kind of made me think a little bit different tack on this, but there are several people who have come to me and remember conversations with me that we had a year or 2 years ago that apparently impacted them way more than I ever thought I was giving. And it tends to come up when I meet people who have been in the department for 2 or 3 years, and they go, no, you were on my interview panel, and you really raked me over the coals on my answer on blah. And I'm like, I don't remember that at all.
Oh, I can totally see that.
But
so where are you tying that?
Where I'm going with that is that just like you're talking about, Babel, you're talking about people that being chosen. I think we also need to be very concerned, or not concerned, very aware of the fact that in those moments when somebody has chosen you, when you don't know it yet, that new firefighter has come into, let's say, the chief's office and is asking a question, and in his mind or her mind, that's their moment. I am with the person that I wanted to be. This is the person I've chosen to mentor me. And you think it's just a little, here's so-and-so, I don't even remember this person's name.
Right.
What do you need now? I can't believe you're asking me that. How long have you been out of the academy? You should know that. And you don't recognize it as that's their moment.
Right. You're shutting the door on them.
You have completely, and I not to go personal, but there are conversations that I've had with my mother back when I was a kid, when my parents were going through their divorce. She has no recollection of those conversations, and to me, they were so impactful that I can remember where I was, what car we were sitting in. It's as vivid as it can be, and for me at the time, it was a huge thing. And I think we end up missing those opportunities.
Well, I want to say 2 things on that. I think we have to be careful underestimating or overestimating what we're talking about impact, because we could all have impact one time with one person, and just exactly like you're saying.
Right.
That's not a mentor-mentee kind of thing. That's just that event. But with that being said, I think it is important for us, and I try to take this important, and really, you hit it home for me just a few minutes ago. Every single day, whether I like it, you like it, Hatch likes it, Bill likes it, you're being interviewed as a potential mentor. They may not connect it like that,
right,
but they know that the one time that I sit down with Bill, if the connection is there, or did Bill just blow me off?
Right.
They landed in my office, and what was your name again? I did something to just totally turn the situation off. Instead of making a conscious effort to remember that I have the potential, you have the potential to make an impact, and it is this interview process for a mentor-mentee relationship kind of thing.
Agreed. And there's the great thing with mentoring, specifically in the fire services, there is no rank, there is no tenure, there is no level of experience, there is no specific training. It's not something to go, well, I can't do that, or I'm not doing that. It can happen at any point of your career. So you can't say, I don't mentor,
or I'm not a role model.
Or I'm not a role model. There is no rank.
And I learned that here.
Yeah,
I learned that here.
I've actually had that conversation several times, with drivers. And I said, a rookie coming in can't see himself years down the road being a chief. but he does see himself to be in the next level, being that driver. So the guy he's watching and he's modeling himself after or using as an informal mentor is you. So how you dress, how you act, how you talk, he's taking all the cues from you, not from me.
And reinforcing every one of them.
Right. So I thought, like, if you don't like how they're acting, they pretty much got it from you. A lot of guys lose it. So
in that everybody that's listening in a fire service,
both of you.
Yeah.
Well, 50% of our listeners are actually civilians.
Peyton and Ashley.
Anybody that has an opportunity to be a mentor, which is basically, we've just said everybody. The quote that I love, that I keep coming back to, and this is what I have to remind myself when somebody shows up in my office that I don't necessarily think should be there, or at first glance, the first thing that pops in my head is, why are you here? I've told you how to deal with this, or you should be going through this route, whatever. That's what the gut reaction is, and then I try and check myself. And the quote is from Colin Powell: leadership is solving problems. The day that soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day that you've stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help or concluded that you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership. And I have to kind of constantly remind myself, if they're coming to me, they have chosen, for whatever reason, to come to me. And right or wrong, they chose it, just like they're going to choose that mentor, just like they're going to, it doesn't mean that I'm the person to solve their problem necessarily, because there's plenty of them that you talk to and you say, look, I think, maybe you do this a different way. Or you don't necessarily give them the answer like a coach would. You're giving them you start that series of questions where you kind of lead them to where you wanted them to be in the first place.
So that's one of my favorite quotes, actually. And then I know there's another one where he goes on and he talks about having follow you even if out of curiosity. And you're 100% right, because I see it as an opportunity for you to really impact somebody's life in a positive way. And sometimes we've all probably done it and don't even realize it, where somebody's been sitting right there and walks into the room and you don't give them the time of day. And recently, I actually heard somebody gave me some advice on that and said, especially, so I'm high functioning, doing 50 million things at one time, and I have a hard time sitting still. So people come in and out of the office or whatever, or I'm having a discussion with somebody, I may be doing multiple other things to keep occupied and stay working. And somebody made mention to me, if somebody's coming to you for your attention, they deserve it, give it to them. And it kind of kicked me in the gut, because it's, I'm thinking, I'm paying attention to you, but I'm doing multiple things, and I have to get some work done. But in all actuality, I'm being extremely disrespectful. And it's something that I'm working on to be cautious of, is to go, they're seeking you out. They're giving you their attention. They deserve yours in return. And I think, speaking for myself, sometimes I could do a poor job of just stopping everything and focusing and going, you got me for this time. And I know sometimes that can be difficult because you have stuff to do, and it's like, all right, you can't put them on a clock either and say you got 15 minutes and then I got to do some work.
That's definitely the tough spot, is to be able to pull back from whatever you're doing and give that 100% to that individual, so that they feel like they're getting 100%. And that's definitely something I have to focus and work on. Sometimes I do okay, and sometimes I'm horrible.
Yeah, I fail out at pretty often, but I'm working on it. I know, I'll tell you, a doctor that I have a great deal of respect for. I'll never forget, about 2 years ago, we were out somewhere, and one of my buddies came into an event that we were all attending. And my buddy works for another department, doesn't know him from anything. Doctor stops in his track, comes over to me, hey, Bell, how are you? How's everything going? Introduce me to your friend, and actually gives, talks to us for about 5 minutes, and then he goes off. I'll never forget my buddy going, I can not believe that guy took the time to just stop, say hello to me, and talk. It just blew him away. So sometimes you're sitting in a position where there's a company officer, a chief, or wherever you are, even a senior firefighter, where giving somebody 5 minutes of your time, focused 5 minutes of your time, if you think about it, today's day and age, you can't give somebody a minute without being on the phone or, somebody ringing because you're at constant access. So that's something that for 2019 I've actually tried to set a goal for myself to pay close attention. I'm off to a crappy start, but I am trying. I am working on it. But it goes into the mentoring thing where heck, it may be somebody that's sitting there that I need some mentoring from that I'm shutting down. You know,
you probably could have the opportunity to learn from that individual.
Mm-hmm.
All right, switching gears a little bit. So let's take Connor. So Connor, you were trying to turn him into an apple or an orange, but he's going to be a peach.
Connor didn't pick me.
Right. But you still have him.
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere.
No, he's still part of it.
Still got to do something with him.
Yeah.
So, and I guarantee you there's people, the two people who are listening, that there's one of them has this situation that they're dealing with. So what advice do we give them for that?
I think, can I chime in first?
No.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I'm totally going to steal this from Bill because I think the
I thought you wanted to do it first before.
Is that why you want to do it?
Yeah, because I'm going to steal it. I think the takeaway for me is, and it doesn't necessarily mean you fix Connor or that you even get the results you want, but for you personally or for me personally, just the fact and the concept of being able to recognize that is not an apple. You want an apple.
Right.
Apples work good in this situation, but you have a peach. So you better figure out how to deal with the peach. I think that to me is the takeaway. Is just being able to differentiate the fact that it's not an apple, it's a peach.
And it's not to say that people can't grow.
Right.
You're not stuck with somebody.
But you're still going to be a peach. You're going to be a high-functioning peach.
Exactly. You can get them to be
right.
the best peach that they're going to be. You can get them to be the best apple that they're going to be. But you can't create, it's what's the other saying? You can't send your ducks to eagle school or whatever. It's a duck. It's not going to be an eagle.
So would the argument, if someone ever said, man, he turned out to be a great apple, or we turned him into an apple.
Right.
The reality was he probably was an apple. He's just a dirty apple.
Yeah.
Or it had a lot of shit on it, and it needed to be cleaned up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's easy to think, I turned this peach into an apple.
Right.
No, you probably did.
No.
It was always an apple.
Yeah,
So-
and I've had this conversation. And obviously use the old Kung Fu Panda analogy, which is awesome. Actually,
It is great.
I would talk about I can't put courage in somebody's heart. If they come in as a lamb, I can't turn them into a lion. Right. It just isn't going to happen. But what I can do is develop a relationship with them where they feel bad about letting me down personally because I found out about them and what makes them tick, and they've talked to me or whatever. But if you're always coming at them and it's like you're not doing your job, you can only kick them so much. You're not really going to get what you're looking for out of them. I think people run into that a lot of times too. So to your point, you have to deal with them at the level that they're at and realize that not everybody approaches the job, our job, or really any job, the same way. It's not as easy as I'm in charge, you're a subordinate, I tell you what to do, you do your job, and we go home. It's never that simple.
And Hatch, you said this a few years ago, and I actually just mentioned it to Nicole, my wife, in a conversation we were having. It is hard work to be a good leader.
It's exhausting.
That's exactly what I told her. I said, it is exhausting, and took your words. I gave you credit for it. I won't do it again, but I gave you credit for it.
That was 3.
Yeah, it was 3. After this, I own it. It is exhausting to break down individuals and learn the individual so you can deal with the individual, because we're so programmed to go for the group is so much easier. This is how I'm. 2 to 3 people have an issue, and we're going to go ahead and blast the entire group and come up with a game plan for the group. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work to say, here's how this individual thinks, works, operates, and kind of break each individual down and give. Technically, what you're doing is almost you're giving each one a different recipe for how you're going to handle the same problem.
Right.
Now, you may have 2 or 3 that are alike, and you can kind of group those together, but for the most part, it is absolutely exhausting to go, well, how am I going to deal with this for that person? Most people don't, and I think that's it is difficult, time-consuming, and I think most people don't, and that's where you get a lot of odds with the crews going, well, this. How can you have one person, one leader, and you have this guy thinks you're amazing, and this guy thinks you're an ass?
Because you're playing several games of chess all at the same time, with each one with a different individual. trying to figure out their moves and your moves and stuff like that. It's never just that. I mean, you can do the shotgun approach and stuff, but to me, I think you kind of fail as a leader a little bit on a lot of that.
And it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
All right, so what if we told the new firefighters? We're telling them seek out that mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Seek them out and put yourself out there a little bit to develop a relationship with somebody that that you think may have it together a little bit, or that you admire or whatever, and talk to them and ask them the questions, and be open to their criticism. Not that it's going to be not everybody's going to tell you that you're doing a great job. I mean,
right.
There are going to be tell times that things you need to work on. Sometimes it's tough to take it, but suck it up. Be a big boy and move on.
I'd also tell that firefighter, when you say firefighter, we just think that newer firefighter, but we have those older head firefighters,
sure.
That 10-year firefighter. What I would tell them in this situation is that you too are being quote unquote interviewed
right.
for mentor program,
mm-hmm.
and you should think about that. Just because you're a firefighter or a master firefighter or whatever we call them, senior firefighters, that doesn't you don't think, okay, when I get to be a captain, then I'm going to be a mentor. That doesn't
right.
work like that.
No.
There's going to be always someone watching you and interviewing you, so to speak. So,
which that brand new firefighter is a mentor to somebody that's not a firefighter.
Yeah, to somebody that's putting the application in.
That brand new firefighter may be a mentor to somebody that is a firefighter, because I'm telling you, it crosses a lot of boundaries. And I'll tell you, I think you should have multiple. I don't think you should be, mentored by an individual. I think you should. There's a lot to be said by having different personalities and different people impacting your life for whatever strengths they have. So I have a lot of mentors in my life for a lot of different reasons, because they have a lot of different strengths. So when I'm looking for particular things, there's different people that are going to have more of an impact on that subject matter, because that's what I'm seeking them out for. So if we go down to the fire service and you're going, I just want to be a good, solid firefighter, get all the right skills, the experience, that the firehouse life, there's certain mentors that are going to do that. And then there's certain ones that are going to be more career based, of what are you doing within your career, how you moving through the ranks, what are you doing to prepare yourself for the next step. So I think there's just a lot of different levels of mentorship. And I would say for me, I've always been lucky to have multiple mentors, although they may not know that they are the mentors. They are mentoring me throughout my career. And there's certain ones that I'll seek out very specific for issues that I know they can give me the right direction for. So I would highly recommend, and I don't care what level you're at. You could be the head of a fire department, top dog in the fire department. It doesn't matter. You're not free of mentorship either. Everybody should have someone they can go to.
So let me ask this. The three of you have all, if I say mentor, you've all got somebody in your mental history that you immediately think of as a mentor to you?
Mm-hmm.
Hatch is shaking his head no.
It'd be hard for me to pinpoint in that formal kind of setting. I would agree more with what Trosh was saying. I think there's a lot of people that have mentored me along the way, and maybe they didn't realize it.
Okay,
I can think of I have a lot, but I have one that's specific.
Pavel's got it. You said you've got people that have mentored you. Is that right?
Yeah, I probably stole from them. They just didn't know it.
Okay. I think it's going to work for what I'm about to ask you. Hatch, you don't have anybody.
This is the setup. We're about to get hit with something.
No, I'm kind of more like Shane would say.
Right, well, maybe this will work.
Collected from a bunch of people.
Maybe this is just a question for Pavel. When you look back at, take one of those, Pavel, you said you have multiples. I've got multiples. You look back at those people that have mentored / influenced, whatever you want to call it, and you think of the one thing that person mentored you on that immediately comes to mind when you think of them as that mentor. That conversation, I remember us having that conversation. Was it a conversation where they were telling you you're better than what you're doing right now? Was it an uncomfortable conversation for you?
The one that comes to my mind immediately was that. and it started making me think, was that person a mentor to me, or did that person at that particular point impact me very much so?
But isn't that what a mentor should do? Is recognize that right now you need to hear this.
Sometimes
That's a good question. I don't know.
So there's
It's not a touchy-feely relationship sometimes. Sometimes they're telling you hard things
that you don't want to hear.
Depending on the mentor, so I've had, when you mentioned it, immediately what ran to my head is a conversation of total trust to go, here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're doing it. And I felt, wow, you're allowing me to go down this road with you and entrusting me with it. Right. And then there's other conversations that I've had with different mentors where you're pretty much getting your ass handed to you, and you don't even realize, hey, you're being mentored right here. So I could see it from both sides, but I could tell you the one that stood out to me the most for an individual in specific is almost like an instant establishment of trust where they empower you and entrust you with something that you wouldn't expect.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think
you do what?
I've thought of somebody now. It took me a little while. But I was going to say, you guys, I had actually told somebody they were overconfident in their abilities. They weren't nearly as good at their job as they thought they were. Was that tough enough for them?
Well, no, the point is it being tough. Was it the right thing to tell that person at the time? Was it what they needed to hear to make them better?
He doesn't get to choose that.
No, I don't.
That's part of that.
They didn't take it well, I can tell you that.
I mean, I can think of 3 people that I would consider mentors, and all 3 of them, the first thing that I can think of that comes to mind are instances where they told me, you're wrong for thinking the way that you're thinking. Basically, that's what the conversation ended up being.
So it started off as a negative, or not negative, but they were...
One of them specifically said that he agreed with me, that I wasn't wrong, but you need to change. You need to change the way you're thinking, or you're not going to survive in your current situation.
We can't talk about that. I'm curious now. Could we all learn from it?
I think for a lot of people, maybe younger firefighters, my concern is that they feel that the mentor-mentee relationship is supposed to be a warm and cuddly one. And it's not always going to be that.
Correct.
The point is that sometimes you are going to be told things that you're not either ready to hear or not willing to hear, and it doesn't necessarily make them wrong. You've really got to think about it and take and look at it and say, here's what this person's saying. Where am I with this? Because it took me a while to get okay with what he was telling me.
Right.
But I eventually did, and I'm glad I did.
Did it was that person, were you already considering them a mentor?
No.
Or are you looking
at that
back
time,
now?
I probably would not have, but I think now I consider that person a mentor.
But
not just because of that.
Time, but you weren't.
Right.
That wasn't a formal, in your mind, mentor. I wondered if that would have damaged it.
No. But I mean, I could think of another one, and he's actually been on our podcast, Marty Green. When I was in a particular division of the department, I'd been there for quite a few years, and he flat told me in a very frank way one day, they are not going to erect a statue to you out in the parking lot. When you die at your desk of a heart attack, they're not going to erect a statue. And that was a kick in the gut.
Every one of us better remember that.
An absolute kick in the gut. And all he was trying to say was, it's time for you to get out of there and get something else. Go somewhere else in the department. You've done what you can do in that area.
Marty might have been just being selfish. Love you, Marty.
There's a whole dynamic to the mentor-mentee that might just be selfish.
So who mentors Hatch?
That's a great question. Do we get to decide?
Nope.
Yeah. We could take a shot at one Marvel character.
Look like.
One Marvel character that would mentor Hatch.
You may tell you who it would be.
Yeah.
The one that's probably that I would find most influential. Willie Tanks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know why?
I admire that guy in so many
Willie's
regards.
awesome.
Because he just drops that knowledge or that wisdom on you, and you don't even realize that it's really kind of happening because he's just kind of throwing it out
it's a
there, and
mind-
then you
So
work your way
benevolent
through it.
on so many levels too. So yeah,
Yeah,
I just aspire to
hashtag
do.
mind Jedi tricks.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and that's I'd say that's one of those things that Marty, in the same way, was very good at, not just with me but with other people, was his ability to tell people things that they didn't necessarily want to hear, and they'd come away from
Right.
it thinking
Feeling
it was
great about it.
Feeling absolutely
Just
great
got my
about it.
ass handed to me, and so I loved it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, anyway,
Well,
Yeah,
good. That was a good conversation.
it is.
Well, whenever we want to end it, we're like, okay,
Yep,
well,
okay.
yep, well,
That's enough of that.
Next. Well, that's how the conversations go.
when you hear 4 wells, well, then
That's all we
It's
got to
unanimous.
say.
it's pretty much over.
That's the voting process. Well.
And it's a close.
we hope everybody has
I enjoyed it,
something from
whether
it.
they did or not.
Yeah, it was a I don't know. It was a discussion.
Yeah.
So send us your thoughts on mentoring or being a mentee or whatever on Facebook or Twitter. And if you got an idea for a show, absolutely reach out to us.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
See you next time.
bye.